Welcome back to Derry Public Radio. Reporting from the basement of the Derry Civic Center, this is CM Alexander with the news. In transportation news, North Central Positronics has announced the groundbreaking launch of a high-speed monorail connecting Derry to Topeka. This state-of-the-art train boasts speeds faster than sound and promises passengers breathtaking panoramic views. However, concerns have arisen as the train's artificial intelligence, named Blaine, has declared itself a god. Ticket sales are still expected to soar as officials have assured riders that any potential smitings will not disrupt the train's schedule. You're listening to Derry Public Radio. This is Derry Public Radio. Welcome back to Derry Public Radio, a bi-weekly Stephen King Book Club podcast. I'm one of your hosts, CM Alexander, alongside Joshua Kahn.
Hey, everybody.
And Eve Gatto.
Hey, constant readers.
And today we are finishing our Patreon selection from Lisa Kahn, The Wastelands, and Josh is leading our discussion.
Let's get back to it. Let's wrap it up. Now, where we left off, we have gotten to Lud, and I'm so glad that the way we've broken it down has gone this way, because I'm glad we didn't have to stop anywhere in Lud. Because
yeah,
the momentum of these final third of the book, so fucking good.
this whole action, the whole last part of the book is one big action sequence. And I want to know if you two feel the same way. To me, reading this, it feels like this is a huge turning point in the Dark Tower as a whole.
Yeah.
Like, it's been weird up to this point, but this is such a huge departure from everything that's come before. It's so good. I love it. I love it exactly as much as I hate Gasher.
This world adds so much because we've only seen wilderness to this point. We've seen sparsely connected communities. This is the first time that we are coming to a place that when we got there, I forgot that there's a point later where I made a note that their population has to be in the thousands, and we haven't seen a lot of people, and that's crazy.
I'm going to relate this to Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
For me, this book is like, okay, season 1 of TNG, not the best compared to the other seasons.
They do go to fuck planet.
That's true.
One of the reasons you have to watch this season anyway.
Yeah.
But season 2 is where these things happen that really hook you. But of course, those hooks are effective because the character and world is being built through that whole first season. So, Eve, to what you're saying, yeah, I definitely felt that too. It's like the gunslinger and the drawing of the three were just kind of getting us acclimated. And now we're really, really deep inside of this.
You need the isolation because if there were other people, there were opportunities. Eddie and Susanna might have wanted to try their hand in a community they came across, maybe. Like there were things like that could have happened, but the isolation bonds them. So by the time they reach civilization, they are a quartet.
And the shock of seeing civilization that resembles our own in these books at this point is so memorable. It's one of the things that sticks out to me.
That's such a good point because like you said earlier, we've only seen wilderness, but we actually have seen Gilead, which is like a medieval like castle.
Yeah.
And so up to this point, we're like, okay, there are these magic doors, there's magic, but we are solidly in a fantasy setting. And moving into Midworld, it's like, oh no, this is a world that moved on a long time before Gilead fell. That's so cool.
And we get so much lore throughout this section. I'm so excited to dive into it more. The first thing we're going to get to, though, is a plane. There's a World War II German aircraft that this giant corpse is in. David Quick, we heard about him briefly last episode. But let's talk about the discussion finding the plane brings up.
Every time Jake, Eddie, or Susanna explain a lot of things to Roland. I'm like, he doesn't know what any of those words or concepts are. Like, what's the point? And it does a nice job of displacing me with stuff I'm familiar with, which is a really interesting way to feel about it.
It's one of the like unanswered questions.
Yeah.
Like it's the way Dark Tower, all of the universes are connected and you can go between there are more worlds than this. But just coming, you're in this alien place and then suddenly, oh, we're not the only things from our world that leak over here. What does that mean? Does it matter?
Not right now.
We don't need an explanation. It's just like this mystery that adds so much to the world building. It's so cool.
Eddie,
I'm gonna say it's so cool a billion times this episode.
Nice.
The idea of the Bermuda Triangle being a door,
Yeah, I like
that
that.
Eddie pitches, I think is so great because there's no explanation. These things just wound up here at some point, and the people who lived here thought, yeah, I can fly that. Spoiler alert, he could not.
Aw.
So as they travel, they make camp for the night, and we start Jake's gunslinger training, his survivalist training, and the topic of riddles comes up. And boy, howdy, I cannot handle Eddie Dean in this scene.
Aw. Are you listening or reading?
I was listening. I listened to that impression of a dead baby joke, and I'm like, oh, Jesus, Eddie.
Roland can't handle it either,
No,
Josh,
it's so bad.
This is a very silly subplot. It comes out, I mean, it's been set up with Jake's riddle book. And it's supposed to show, like, the fate, some force, the white or whatever, is leading them to the things that they'll need to continue their journey. But this scene where Roland's just like, oh, yeah, hell yeah. There are two things that gunslingers love. It's guns and riddles.
Yeah. But does the what is it called? The Riddle Day Festival sounds so badass. It sounds like something I would want to watch.
Sounds like my nightmare.
How do you get okay, maybe this is just a me thing that I'm not seeking out new riddles, I guess. But I feel like there are only so many riddles. Is that just me?
How vibrant is the modern day riddling community?
Yeah.
Riddles advance at the same speed of language.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. They evolve with society.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there could be, man, if any Gen Z listener wants to send us a full Gen Z lingo riddle, I'll give it a shot. But as Roland explains the breakdown of how riddles work, essentially saying they're puns at the end of the day.
That's
what
kind of was turning me a little more towards riddling.
But it's the ability to think around corners is how Court would refer to it. And Court was a riddle master. Court loved two things: fucking bitches and solving riddles.
I think you say hitting students. Three things.
He didn't love that. He had to do that. That's you're a teacher.
Yeah, I love every aspect of it, especially cold cocking students.
This is a comedy podcast, everyone.
But I love that it shows the seriousness. Court killed a cheater one year in front of everybody. And that the other detail that we learn about Roland is that his father told him he wasn't good at it because he lacks imagination, which is something we talked about in Little Sisters.
How do you cheat at a riddle?
All right. That's a great question.
Fun fact, this is a riddle.
By finding out what riddle will be asked ahead of time and knowing the answer.
Oh yeah, I guess that's just a truth thing you can cheat at a riddle.
Because part of the explanation of the riddle games is everybody brings a riddle, and then there are riddle masters who read them, decide if they're fair or not, and those get put in. So theoretically, if you just found out some of them ahead of time, you might be able to cheat.
Makes sense. Never mind.
Did you have an answer? that you're going to share?
Oh yeah, but his answer was more true, so I
I can
can't
just
say it.
I can just cut that out.
That's
Nobody will
nice.
ever know how smart Josh is with riddles.
Editing argument. You can put it anywhere. But this is the very base riddle. All of us know it. It fits the pun category. When is a door not a door?
Oh,
When
not
it's
the
a door.
baby one.
Yeah, not the baby one. But I love that it is a clear example of Roland being bad at riddles because he first answers false love.
Yeah, he overthinks it.
Yeah.
Although he is good at riddles.
He's good at
Well, better than Eddie, for sure.
yeah. That
Yeah.
doesn't seem hard.
Eddie's a dumbass apparently, because he tries to riddle and he just tells dumb jokes, and it pisses Roland off
Oh my
so
God,
bad.
yeah.
It's kind of endearing.
I was gonna say I like Eddie in this. Like I'm more like, yeah, that'd be me making a stupid. I do that at funerals, weddings.
Ask
That's
riddles.
fair.
No, make horrible jokes.
From this point on, they go on a watch rotation. The only person left out of it is Jake because he is still training, but he will eventually rotate in.
hmm
Eddie alone hears the music. We have music from the city coming through, and he thinks he recognizes it.
It's a drum sound, and it's a ZZ Top song that I can't remember the name of.
Called Velcro Fly.
Yes, thank you.
The next few days are a repeat of that. It is travel, reading, training, discussion, camping,
Mhm.
so on and so forth. They find some pretty fucked up looking bees. Some
This made me really sad, only because it made me think of what we're doing to our bees. It was another scary mirroring of an issue in Midworld reflecting,
Yeah.
problems we have in modern day society, which Stephen King is good at.
really good at. And
Also, the second instance of mutated insect-like things in the series.
Mhm.
We got the gross spiders that freaked me out in the
Yeah.
first book.
Eddie pieces together that the easy solution is nuclear fallout. That
Mhm.
something, a cataclysm happened in this area and it has destroyed the natural life that was here.
While you guys were reading this, did you keep like in the back of your head the timeline, like the fact that when Roland finally caught up to the man in black, when they were done and he came to, a long time had passed.
I still, because time is nonsense
Right.
Yeah.
in this world, I don't know what it means. I'll never know.
Well, because I mean, even the last episode, the people in the village were talking about how long it's been since they've seen gunslingers, and we'll get more of that too. And it's like, technically, is Roland like 200 years old or something?
Very well
I think
could be.
so. Right, time works different.
hmm
So if you're frozen and thought 200 years later, do you add 200 to your birthday?
I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Because it's the same process. You physically wouldn't be
Yeah.
that old, but
You were born still
Technically,
in that year.
yeah. So I
I'm-
think that's what Roland's going
I'm
through.
trying to remember if this issue is brought up at any time in Avatar: The Last Airbender, because Aang is like
yeah.
200 years
Mm.
old.
I think it does come up actually.
Yeah.
Eddie asks Roland, "Hey, what's your deal setting up our next book?" Which is great.
What?
He basically demands Roland's entire backstory.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
and
Yeah.
Roland
That
is
is
like-
really funny.
Yeah.
We'll
It's-
get to it in Wizard and Glass, Eddie.
It is a little jarring, I think, because it so obviously feels like Eddie speaking in the voice of the readers.
Yes.
Like it is Eddie going, "Hey, everyone's going to really bother us about why you're not saying anything about your past. What's the deal with that?"
I wish I could remember if I thought anything about that the first time I read this when I was a teenager.
I feel like I'd just given up that we were ever going to learn about
Mhm.
Roland because he'd been so mysterious this whole
Mhm.
time. So 3 days walk and they reach the city. Jake wakes Roland after hearing the sound of fighting coming from the city.
That is so upsetting.
They've been talking about there being hope that there might be people that could help them on this, but now not so much.
I realize too the isolation that has been set up the first 2.5 books now also makes when suddenly we are faced with the reality of so many more people than we anticipated, and it being fighting, the sounds of fighting is just like I was so anxious from this point forward in the book, and even though I know how it turns out, and even when I reread it to prep, I listen and read a few times, I was anxious every single time.
What I love about this is this, from the time they reach the bridge to the end of the book, this is the first time we are seeing them as a team of gunslingers.
Yeah.
This feels like they've got the team together, and now this is the test, the real test of, can they stay true? Can they survive this? And spoiler alert, they don't. Everyone dies.
Oh, no.
Sorry.
I really forgot that we split the party so fast once we get into town.
Never split the party.
Never split the party. Roland discusses detouring because he was hoping to avoid violence at any cost. And Jake says they need Blaine because the wastelands will kill them if they try to walk through it.
He is so freaking right. And I just love to reflect on this moment, once we actually experience the wastelands. Yeah, like thank goodness he insisted because no, that would not have happened.
No. Lud has an absurd amount of defenses. Also something that you wouldn't expect from a city in this world. There are trenches that you have to walk through. They have set up traps and broken down bridges so that you have to be slow across them.
It broke my heart when Jake was like, "What's all this about?" And Eddie's like, "Oh, I don't know." Did not want to tell him that it was for ambushes.
But they do see a monorail track that is broken and a blue train in the water. And Eddie thinks it's Blaine immediately because boys are blue, right? That's...
Oh. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of the gendered...
Honestly, me neither.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Oh. That's the... Because he's like, I know Blaine is pink. In my dreams, Blaine was always pink. But Eddie immediately is like,
fun.
It's a blue one.
I guess I didn't think of it because I was thinking of Blaine being pink is phallic.
Oh, no. Huh.
Wow.
That really colors my my inner picture of what Blaine looks like.
All trains look like penises. Come on, you know it, I know it.
I've watched Thomas the Tank Engine.
Thomas the Spank Engine.
Oh, no.
By H.R. Giger.
When they finally reach the bridge, at first, from a distance, thinking it's not going to be that bad, but it is visibly swaying.
Oh, my. Yeah, and we get this through Eddie because I also was like, yeah, I've walked across a bridge.
Brag.
Yeah. You're welcome, everybody. And it's cool, but it's not terrifying because it's so huge and sturdy. And then Eddie's like, yeah, now that I'm up here, this thing is rocking like a bassinet. We're all going to die.
This is a point in any adventure I'm on where I'm like, I'll stay here and die.
I'm afraid of heights. I'm okay if I'm like, I love rock climbing because I'm attached to a rope. But the minute there's no safety, the minute that's gone, I just cry.
Even watching other people at great heights, I accidentally saw a picture of a dude free climbing the side of a sheer cliff, and it almost gave me a panic attack.
I love that you accidentally described that as accidentally.
Yeah, I didn't mean to see it.
Never watch Cliffhanger with Sylvester Stallone.
Done and done.
It's a good movie, though.
But I have seen the beginning of Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls.
Parody.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is very scary. And what happens next is my least favorite because it's so upsetting. Well, I mean, there are a lot of upsetting parts of this book, but it's because
Yeah.
See, this is a part I love because it is an obvious parallel of Jake being
Yes.
dropped into the chasm in the first book. They are crossing this bridge, and Oi is blown off. He's thrown off balance, and he begins to fall. And Jake does not do anything to hesitate for a single second.
Nope.
I would do the same for
He
Oi.
dives to catch him. It's so awesome at like juxtaposing him and Roland. It's awesome. And then it gives Roland the chance to redeem himself. And he reaches down and saves them.
And the only reason that Oi doesn't plummet to his death is because he sinks his teeth into Jake's outstretched hand. I mean, the only thing he can do.
Yeah, he's
Although
an
he's, like,
animal.
Billy Bumbler, like, he's very talented, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he, like, they grasped, if he gave him his
If
paw.
he did the predator handshake
Yeah,
with him.
yeah.
And I love how, like, after they get back to
Yeah.
safety, Oi's obviously, like, repentant. He's,
Yeah.
like,
upset.
licking his
Yeah.
hand.
And Jake's like, it's not your fault. I know you didn't mean it.
So
I love Oi so much.
we'll transition from this beautiful moment to meeting Gasher of the Greys. Who would like to describe Gasher?
This dude sucks.
Yeah, he's gross.
Yeah, he's a gross old man.
I have a rhyme for him.
Oh,
Gasher?
a rhyme for him?
Gasher, he's a real smasher of asses in narrow passageways.
That was poetry.
That was
That
beautiful.
that deserves to be published
Well,
in
there's-
McSweeney's.
There's a lot of like rhyming and singing in this next part, so I was just trying to get into
No,
the
I
spirit.
I
love
like
that.
it, yeah.
The off rhyme at the end that got me. I love it. Yeah, no, he's just this gross, like obviously visibly diseased old dude with, if you're listening, an insane accent.
Yes, it's very weird.
And he has obviously set this bridge as a trap because they can't reach their guns. He is completely safe, and they have to come to him one at a time. And he comes out and is like, "Hey, fuck all y'all, give me the kid."
Yeah,
Ooh.
which we knew.
Yeah.
We knew that was the danger. But yet he's just standing there holding a hand grenade.
And he's
It's called a grenado. Thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, yeah, grenado.
this isn't the right word, but this is how I picture him. Falling apart.
Yeah.
He's very, very sick.
He's like leprous.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has what they call it, horse blossoms. Basically, his body's rotting from syphilis. Is essentially what's happening. And he is saying, "You know that I will blow us up.
I have nothing to
because
lose." Yeah.
I'm dead anyway." So
Which is so fucked. That makes
Yeah.
a scary ass villain.
Yeah,
it
who is just
does.
like, nah, I don't care.
Yeah.
I have nothing to live for, and I'm causing this cruelty to you for no reason.
yeah,
It's scary.
but Roland gives up Jake, and Eddie. I get that Eddie doesn't have a lot of faith in Roland, but he could have not freaked out so hard thinking Roland was just giving him away and would be done with it. Because Eddie's
Yeah.
very aggressive about his decision to let him go.
Although I think that's important, though, to show Gasher
True.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
this isn't some sort of plot. Because Susanna is on Roland's back, and they're kind of having this, I can't remember if it's spoken a lot, like whispered moment to each other, but she knows, like she understands what's going on. But Eddie is further behind because he was bringing up the rear. And he's just like, Roland, you piece of shit. How can you do that? Which, again, yeah, Gasher's going to see that and be like, yeah, I got the upper hand.
So Jake goes with Gasher.
Another important thing to note is that Gasher is threatening to kill Oi, but before he can, Oi jumps from Jake's arms and runs off into the city.
Yeah.
Freaked me out. So I was like, no, Oi alone in the city.
I'd watch that animated cartoon. So Roland, after they let Gasher go, they give it some time. Everybody crosses. Roland explains the plan. They're going to split the party. Eddie and Susanna are going to find the cradle where the monorail is, and Roland is going to find Jake. And Roland, before they separate, Eddie's like, well, what if we run into more people? And Roland just says, handle them. Yeah.
And also, this is the point where Eddie's like, he can feel the steel coming out. Like, he talks about how, like, he knows that he might have to kill people, and he's like, oh, that is not good.
How okay I am with
But
that
I'm
idea.
fucking,
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'll do it.
If it means seeing the tower.
Yeah.
They are in this world.
Yeah, they're all in.
Hmm.
So next, what did you feel about the Gasher leading Jake through the underground, the back alleys and traps?
I love how this segment is like constructed
Mm-hmm.
because we get this long piece about Jake being drug through miles of like
Mhm.
winding labyrinthine ruins and
Losing hope like every step of the way.
absolutely like coming to terms with like something awful is going I'm in a bad spot.
No way Roland can track me through this
Mhm.
nonsense.
And he keeps it's a really cool way of letting us know landmarks along the
Yeah.
way because they keep coming upon traps that have been set by the Greys, we must assume, and they're like elaborate and really fucked up.
Yeah.
The wires.
Yeah, the tripwires.
Holy fuck, that's so cool. Fuck. So they're walking, and Gasher stops Jake, and he's like, "Hey, look here!" And there are these nearly invisible tripwires on stretched across a hallway made of like what, in my imagination, was like an impossibly tall walls of garbage.
Yeah.
Like I can just imagine
I-
looking up
Like
and
the
seeing.
labyrinth, the scene where
Yeah. And Gasher's like, yeah, if we trip this, all of this comes down on top of us. It'll be all it'll suck so much. And as like Jake is going through, he like thinks about it and he's like, I'm fucking dead anyway. Maybe I should bring it down. And comes like really close to doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe
It
that's at the
seems-
second
he really
trap.
notices
considers
the
it,
hesitation.
yeah.
And then there's a cobblestones
Mhm.
with explosives or something
Yeah.
with big spike walls or whatever. It's a really neat way to lead us through this, and then later when we are following Roland tracking him, it gives us so much like context. It's really cool.
I love it. It's really effective because I mean, as a reader, you're in Jake's mind first having this
Mhm.
experience. And sometimes I lose sight of the fact that okay, the author is sharing information through the characters, and sometimes I'm like, is this what the character believes, or is this what the author is telling a reader through that character? And so I did have that like anxiety about what's gonna happen
Mhm.
with Jake and Roland trying to follow him. And so I really found that effective. I enjoyed it a lot. And then later when Roland, we find out, intentionally sets off one of the traps
Mhm.
to make
Mhm.
Gasher kind of relax. Because Gasher, like you said, Eve, breakneck pace, is also just like beating the shit out of Jake the
Pummeling
whole
him.
way.
Yeah.
Making awful
Horrible
threats.
threats. And Jake has this moment where he's like, oh my God, Roland is dead. All hope is lost. And you cut back to Roland and he's like, Jake's smart enough to know that I'm not dead. And then when we come back to Jake, he's like, I'm starting to doubt that Roland fell for that.
I like to think that that's their psychic like link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually hearing Roland go, Jake knows I'm not dead.
It's when it cuts back to Roland with that crosswire garbage trap, and he's like, "That's so childish." He
Yeah.
looks.
Well,
It's
Jake
so.
has never seen this stuff
Right.
before. So yeah, he's viewing it through the eyes of a child
Mhm.
too. And we should also mention Roland is having such success in part because Oi appears at the
Yeah.
start of
Mhm.
him tracking Jake and helps him.
Now this next scene is. I forgot it existed entirely until this rereading it this time, because Eddie and Susanna, they hear the drums start playing again,
Mhm.
and then they see what appears to be a little boy who I imagine dressed like a little sailor boy, comes running out with his hand behind his back, and they've seen this trick before. So Susanna gives him just a real close look, and it's an old man, and they draw their guns on him.
Yeah,
And
she doesn't get that look until after they have shot him, because
Oh,
at
yeah.
first she's like, "Oh my god, I shot a child without
That's
thinking."
right.
She trusts her. She trusts her instincts, though, which is really important, because right before this, I think it's when the drums start again, she has this intuition, and she knows, like, oh, for some reason, like, it's not explained to us, I know things about what's going on that I have no way of knowing. So she knows that this sound it's basically like, oh, what's that movie?
I was thinking The Lottery.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
that, like things like that. There are a bunch of them, but people come out, and somebody who's picked the won the
Mhm.
lottery that day
Yeah.
in a bad way is hunted down and killed, and they think they have to do this to survive, the wrath of this evil
Exactly
god running the
like that
city.
classic piece of literature.
Oh, The Purge.
Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. But this is the moment that I made the note that the population has to be so much larger among the pubes than we thought,
Mhm.
because this song gets played several times a day.
Yeah.
And if they're able to continually sacrifice.
Yeah, it's not an annual thing.
Yeah.
It's not
Mhm.
even a daily thing. It's multiple times a day. And they see a bunch of like corpses to varying degrees of
Mhm.
freshness.
Mhm.
Think this part's great. A bunch of people rush them and they just mow them all
Yeah,
down.
they do.
Eventually, people are like, "Oh," and they just stop. And they're like genuinely sad. They're like, "Oh, you killed all our friends."
Yeah.
Why'd
What
you
the
do
hell?
that?
And we find out that the guy that's in charge, they literally just crucified.
Just killed him.
It's all so bleak.
It is, but at the same time, I was frustrated because they're like, "Oh, I can't believe you'd shoot at us." They're like,
Yeah.
"What did you expect?
Yeah.
You started it."
But they don't know that it's for their god. They have to do it, so it's not their fault. So Eddie gets the two of them to lead them to Blaine against their initial
They
best
basically
judgment.
threaten them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love that Eddie basically says, if you try to run, I'll shoot you, and then feels stupid for saying it because they're like already
Okay.
dead. Like these people are already have given up on life.
Mhm.
When they know they can be sacrificed numerous times a day, you don't treat it too sacred, I guess.
Eddie and Susanna, this whole experience with the people of Lud until they get to the cradle, they take turns trying to talk reason, like trying to talk sense into them and help them, even though it's funny too, because I can't remember which of them says it, but one of them pushes back on the idea of this, vengeful god that's doing this, because they're talking about ghosts in the machine, basically. And they're like, there's no such thing. Like, dudes, you've seen so much. Like, you tag teamed a fuck demon
Yeah, it's
not that
true.
long
I-
ago.
Not
What is
that long ago.
impossible?
Susanna immediately, because she's the same thing. She's like, "There's no such thing as ghosts," and her immediate thought is like, "Shut the fuck up! What do you mean there's no ghosts?" It's so great. And yeah, they give up and they go on their way to Blaine's cradle.
Where they see miniature statues of all of the guardians of the beam around the cradle, which is very fucking cool.
Mhm.
There's so many questions about what Lud must have been like in its prime.
Yeah.
Back in the sewers, Gasher and Jake are getting closer to the TikTok man's lair. Roland sets off the trap we talked about and makes a leash for Oi when it gets dark so that he can follow him.
I love his interactions with Oi too, because
They're
it's always
so good.
he's very observant of Oi's behaviors. When Oi was licking the blood off of Jake's hand, not because he was like, "Ooh, yeah," but because he felt bad and he was trying to help. Roland was very like, I don't want him to have a taste for Jake's blood, and very gently wiped Jake's blood off of his muzzle. And then when he has to like hold him because they're, going down into a sewer, or when he has to, like you said, put him on a leash, he explains it to him. He's like, "Okay, I'm going to do this. Don't bite me."
I love it. It's so obvious that like Roland is like, "I get it. you're Jake's friend.
And you understand English.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
It's great. And
Yeah, he doesn't want anybody except Jake to touch him.
yeah, but I don't know. It's very charming how much like respect
Yes.
Roland has for this little possum creature.
When it comes to things involving his quest and Ka, he doesn't really question anything.
But to be fair, coming up soon, he's real quick to David the Hawk away. But we'll get to that shortly. Back at the cradle, there I mentioned the Beam Guardians, but there's also a giant golden statue that Susanna thinks is Roland at first.
That freaks me out.
It just it shows that the gunslingers
We're such a vital part of this world.
They were order. They were that symbol of hope.
And just the fall of civilization, that's something that important, is like there's a couple of them left now.
Yeah. So Maud, one of the pubes that is
I hate that.
that leads them, basically says, you don't go up there, you will get electrocuted to death. She doesn't describe it like that, but she's like, you'll be struck down by lightning or whatever, because that's what happens. Like, this area stays clean and we stay out of it. That's what's up. And Eddie and Susanna talk about how much they are committed to this journey, this place. They love each other. They are in this from here on out together.
They get really horny several times too, which I don't know that I could muster feelings of desire in this setting.
Well, you have never experienced.
I've never killed
mowing
someone.
down
No,
a bunch
you've
of
never
people.
fucked in a train station.
I guess I have something else to add to my bucket list.
There you
Thanks,
go.
Eve.
Yeah. Gasher now has slowed down because he believes Roland to be dead, and they are coming up on the TikTok man's entrance. He continues to beat the shit out of Jake every time Jake hesitates. They reach the lair, and there's an intercom, and the man on the other side asks for a password. Gasher forgot.
This is going to become very important later, because yes, Gasher forgot, but fortunately he has a pal who wrote the password on a slip of paper, and he's got it hidden beneath the scarf he wears on his head.
Which is so funny because he can't read.
So Jake has to read it to him.
Yeah.
And I love Jake's what if I don't? And he's being sincere, and he's not trying to be tough. He's just again, he keeps having these thoughts of despair and is it even worth it? Because what's happened to me already sucks, and it's not going to get better when I walk through this door. And I think this is where Gasher threatens him with, you see me, how pretty I look right now? There are fate's worse than death. So if you don't, I'll just smash your face in, but also infect you with what I've got.
Yeah. And so he decides to read it.
Yeah.
Back to Eddie and Susanna, where they have entered Blaine's cradle and discover the intercom. Who would like to discuss the interactions with the intercom?
This is where we meet young Blaine, right?
Little Blaine.
Little Blaine.
In theory.
In theory, spoiler alert.
What?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just guessing.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Who's Blaine? They approach this terminal, and a voice comes out of it that sounds like it's just this quiet, meek voice that says hey, you gotta get out of here. Blaine is, you don't want to meet him. He's bad.
He is sleeping.
He's sleeping, and if he wakes up, we're all fucked.
But it's too late because Blaine is waking up. The sounds of him all over the city start humming.
Yeah, and the fact that when he starts waking up, the whole city starts coming to life shows how Blaine is not a train. Blaine is the city of Lud.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. That's so cool.
Blaine demands to know who woke him up, and Eddie explains that he's Eddie Dean of New York, and Blaine calls him a liar because all the doors to New York have been closed since Gilead was lost. And then Eddie proceeds to do what I do at an improv show when I get New York as a suggestion, and just proceeds to name several landmarks in a New York accent.
It works.
And Blaine's like, fucking got me there. Checkmate.
Good job, partner, in John Wayne's voice.
The frightfully good impressions is so weird.
I have a thing about this. Okay, it's obviously supposed to be that Blaine is multidimensional or whatever, or
Mhm.
has knowledge of other worlds. I would love if he spoke in nothing but voices and we were just to assume that voices we don't recognize are celebrities from other planes of existence,
That'd be cool.
right?
That's pretty good.
In my headcanon, he's doing impressions of
Glornog.
Glornog and Bobby Dunkus.
He's
all
doing
them.
his impression of Blaine because he is Lud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
That famous comedian, Blaine.
No, Blaine from Cinnabar Island?
Yeah, oh yeah, that
I believe he
Blaine.
had a Magmar. Rapidash?
Jesus. Now let's jump back to the sewers and meet the Council of the Greys. Surprisingly young, because everybody we have seen so far has been very old.
Mhm.
But there are a handful of people in this room. We see the TikTok man who...
Of course, played by Jason Matsukas in John Wick 3.
Yes! As he wears a bitchin' clock necklace that also doesn't tell time, because that doesn't work here.
Flavor of love. That's what I thought.
And I love that in this introduction, Jake watches him just straight up kill a woman for laughing too much. Again, the price of life is nothing in this city.
Josh,
What?
he would kill you for laughing too
Oh,
loud.
boy.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah, and when he kills this random woman, he also moves with uncanny speed. Like, I think Jake compares him to how fast he has seen Roland move. And just all in all, he has this aura about him of like, he's not sick in the way that all of these
He's
people are
different.
sick.
Also, he's huge.
Yeah.
Also he's
like
a giant.
Yeah.
And that he deduces that this has to be a descendant of David Quick.
Mhm.
And we come to find out this is Andrew Quick, or otherwise known as the TikTok man. And TikTok throws him across the room when he does the Lord Perth.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
rhyme.
love that.
That shit was wild.
Yeah, Lord Perth. Did we even mention that
I don't
earlier?
think so.
Because Roland tells the story of Lord Perth who fell to Earth. He was a giant that was slain. He's Midworld's Goliath.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And when Jake is confronted by the TikTok man, he like smarts off and compares him to Lord Perth, and it breaks the dude. He's like, "Don't you dare curse me with the fate of a biblical giant."
That's really showing weakness.
It really is.
yeah.
It's insecurity.
Which makes
Go to
him
therapy, man.
Which makes him even scarier because that tells us like, oh, this guy is unhinged.
Mhm.
Not just powerful and smart.
And magically able to use clocks? Question mark? No?
What?
So he has all these clocks everywhere,
Yeah.
and part of how Jake like not ingratiates, but like extends his life
Yeah.
is that TikTok man notices his watch, which earlier in the book was just spitting out gibberish, and he's like, "Can I have that?" Obviously, I'm going to take that, but will you give it to me as a sign of like fealty? And he does, and the second he touches it, it starts running normally.
I missed
Did
that.
that not happen?
somehow. I don't remember that.
Am I making that up? I smoke a lot of weed, y'all.
I love that you might have made that up because I do recall him messing with it. I don't remember it saying that it runs correctly,
Because
though.
he's
But it's possible
obsessed
because it's just a
with-
one line.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with the technology, I thought, because he wanted to get things running.
That too.
True.
I don't know.
Listeners, let me know if I know how to read.
Listeners, fact check Eve. Luckily, Jake gets a bit of relief at this moment because he sees through the vents some bumbler eyes.
Oh.
And we cut back to Roland.
It's time to bumbler eyes. Cut it. Cut that. That was nothing.
Never.
No. People have to think I'm funny.
Roland is on the other side of this locked door. He knows there's no way for him to get through. And this is, again, he reflects that I while not being a full member of this quartet, I am part, we are Ka. So he tries to see through Jake's eyes, only to find out Jake is staring just at a giant because he can't really see anything else. And he tries to send him a message. And I love that even through weird telepathy, Roland can tell this person will sense if Jake
suddenly,
startles
yeah.
or something. Yeah, so he's trying to really delicately approach this. And Jake's focus is so much on TikTok that when Roland sends Oi through the vent to see everything, he wants him to be able to report back basically what he can use to open the door.
Remote viewing.
Yes.
They call it in Psychonauts.
There's a weird piece of lore here that we get that Roland's grandmother was called Deirdre the Mad.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's a cool name.
Yeah.
Can you guys start calling me CM the Mad?
Absolutely.
Yes, of course.
Are you kidding me?
You're in my
you.
phone as Steel Machine.
That's good, too. That's a Dark Half reference, listeners.
Back at Blaine, Eddie and Susanna are thinking about their questions. Eddie asks a ton of questions about what Blaine's been up to because they're trying to fill time.
Eddie is not reading the room, though,
No.
at all. Anytime he talks to Blaine, it's like, shut up, dude.
And they start feeling the air around them crackle.
Well, is it Blaine? He's already told them to ask him a question.
Yes.
And what he means is ask me a riddle. And I guess saying ask me a question, but meaning ask me a riddle is a riddle. That's right.
Yeah. The answer to the riddle
I hate
is...
riddles. I'm just like Roland, I guess.
Can't think around corners.
I wish I had prepared better and brought a bunch of riddles for you. CM
Thank you
the
for
Mad.
not doing that.
Let's just wait until Merry Derry Christmas.
Oh, no.
That's a good idea.
So Susanna starts to ask a riddle that she forgets halfway through. Thankfully, Eddie jumps in with the rest of it. And Blaine answers. I believe that was the river, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, that one's lame, but I still like riddles.
And that Eddie says, oh, he's a junkie for riddles.
Yeah,
He
Eddie
recognizes junkies,
immediately is
yeah.
like, oh, this dude would do anything for a riddle.
He wants some hot rids.
That makes it sound like an STD.
So Susanna then says, well, if riddles are what you really want, our compatriots have a ton more. There's a whole book full of them. Let's just go take us on a ride and don't kill us. And he gives them another riddle that they have to prime his pump, but his pump primes backwards.
Sexy.
This is not a riddle. I'm declaring it not a riddle.
It's a puzzle.
It's a puzzle at best. Like Professor Layton could say this and I'd have a good time, but it's not a riddle.
I agreed. I feel like the use of riddle is very loose in this world. They got loose rids.
Oh, gross.
TikTok reveals then that there are all these computers under the city that he wants to get them up and running, and he threatens Jake, saying, tell me how to make them work, or I'll destroy you. Jake starts fumbling around for an answer when he hears Roland. Roland give him the instruction to distract TikTok man, and that's when he gets the idea to share the password story.
I love this part. 'Cause immediately he's like, hey, why don't you ask your pal Gasher there how he remembered the password to get in? And so he totally rats him out, and Gasher instantly is so defensive. And TikTok's like, hey, man, just show me, just take your scarf off, and then we have nothing to worry about.
Because this has to be a lie. He has to be lying because you are not stupid enough to take our secure password out in the surface.
The moral of this part of the book is tattling is great. You should tattle on everyone.
Jake uses this distraction to move toward the door controls, but he sees Oi about to attack TikTok man to David the Hawk him.
And he knows that Roland put him up to it. And oh my, this made me so sad because on the one hand, I'm like, okay, Oi is going to do what he's going to do no matter what. He's made that choice. You are potentially ruining his opportunity and putting him at greater risk by calling it out for everybody to see. But at the same time, too, I mean, it's Oi. Of course, you'd be like, no, 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 no. And so Jake, instead of reaching for the button that's near TikTok's throne, which is what
to
I
open
imagine,
the door to let Roland in.
he tries to save Oi instead.
Luckily, TikTok doesn't kill Oi. Oi gets TikTok's eye, though, and that's pretty
Yeah,
rad.
he does.
Jake grabs a machine gun that is nearby and just lays waste at knee level, taking TikTok down. And Jake pulls the gun out and shoots him in the head. Shoots TikTok in the head with his own gun. That's
Which is cool.
rude.
This is interesting because I've seen this misunderstood on the internet. The wound is described as it's like a flap of skin on TikTok's forehead kind of falls down. And it's the book says Roland would have known what that meant. Head wounds like that means that the bullet didn't go in, it like hit the skull.
It
Grazed off.
Yeah. But for some reason, people online interpreted this as TikTok man being like a robot, kind of like Shardik or
weird.
or like part robot, part organic.
That's so funny.
I was like, oh, I really love that, but no, it's a medical. It's referring to a medical thing.
Jake drops the gun and Gasher gets a hold of him and starts trying to choke him to death. Then the wheel gets locked and Roland flies in and kills anything that moves.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
Oh yeah, doesn't it get unlocked? Because when all of this chaos starts, the Council of Greys just like bail out, and a lady runs out the front door is what I think of it as.
Yeah, and Roland lays her out. There are others that do try to run, and Roland shoots them in the back.
So that there aren't any future problems,
right.
Which is smart.
But I love that up on the surface, during that initial standoff with the pubes, Eddie and Susanna are talking about, we'll let everybody go as long as these two people take us. And Maud makes a comment that there's no gunslinger that ever shot someone in the back. They're not back shooters.
I don't know. If I walked in, I was Roland, and I saw this giant strangling Jake, I'd shoot everybody.
Now an alarm goes off in the hideout and all over Lud, because Blaine is powering up for a run, and he has got a little business to do.
Which is, of course, killing everyone.
Yeah!
I want to say something important here. Blaine walked so Gladys can run.
Wow. Yeah. You know what? Yes.
GLaDOS from Portal. Oh, CM, if you haven't played Portal,
I haven't played it, but I'm familiar with
Portal.
The lore.
It's so good.
Yeah, that's a fun reference.
The alarm down below is so insanely loud, and he thinks that he's trying to figure out what the Greys and Pubes must think is happening. We're going to find out pretty soon what they think is happening, because Blaine calls through the speakers to Roland and says, basically, I'm going to, if you're this gunslinger, I'm going to guide you. He
sends him a phantasm ball to follow.
Yeah. I like that some just jack off runs through the room and shouts, and Blaine kills him for interrupting. And before he will lead him, he asks Roland for a riddle. And Roland gives him one. He says, good enough, this way. And they take an escalator to the surface. Meanwhile, the monitors that we see all over Lud, there are suicides happening. The most unnerving being the massive press that people are just launching. They're taking the next person in line, tossing them in, and everybody's smiling about it.
Oh yeah, what Eddie and Susanna notice is that people are patiently waiting in line for their turn. They're not being murdered.
Now the quartet is reunited, and while Roland and Susanna examine the control box, Jake and Eddie discuss Blaine living up to the hype, basically. And they're both so overwhelmed with everything that has happened. They're just like, it's about right.
Well, it was just these two who dreamt about him, right?
Yes. So it was just...
Yeah, seeing that,
Blaine tells them they have that he's initiated the self-destruct in the city. In 12 minutes, everything will go. Oh, and it will not be painless, in case you were worried.
Clouds of neurotoxin will be released in the streets.
Jake says there are thousands of people. You can't do this. And Blaine says they're boring. If they wanted to live, they'd be interesting. I get it.
Mhm.
Yeah. If I was a demented god, probably. Yeah. We jump back to the TikTok man waking up with a man named Richard Fannin.
Lots of names, actually. That's the one he gives him, though, to use.
What did you feel like when you read this scene when we got Flag?
Of course, awesome.
Mm.
Like, of course, it's our boy. I definitely remember the first time reading through this when he showed up going, well, how the fuck is this going to turn out by the end of the book? We're almost done. Which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Because, the man in black, or no, not the man in black, the walking dude shows up and TikTok man is not dead. He, Brandel Flag, because I don't remember his name, rips the flap of skin off the TikTok man's head and eats it.
Great.
Brutal. And basically says, you have a job, get up, you will get your revenge.
The sweetest, most tasty part of this is when TikTok starts saying over and over again, my life for you. And he's like, oh, I'm just a sucker for that expression. Reminds me of an old friend. Placing this after the stand.
Yeah.
Which will be a fun, neat thing to talk about later in a different episode.
Now we get into our last section, Riddle and Wastelands. Susanna knows that she knows the answer to the puzzle, but she can't grasp it. Roland pulls out a bullet and does his hypnotism trick, and she remembers how to figure out what numbers are prime.
Yeah, this was interesting because you see like all these elements of her own personality, but they're kind of evolved. Like Detta comes out and she's like, oh, Detta's a dumb bitch because she never wanted to try at math, but I was good at it. Or, you know, stuff just sort of like, but also like focused and serious and not being crazy, but still like the tough Detta that were the positive aspects of that personality. So it was kind of fun to see those come back into play and then to see them gradually kind of fade away as Susanna naturally came out of the hypnosis.
That's my favorite part of it, is because you see Roland bringing out Detta so that she could solve this problem, but not having the fact that she is so integrated into Susanna now that she comes out of it herself and is by the end of it punching in the answer as Susanna.
Yep.
It's really neat.
Yeah, it fucking rules.
And Jake helps with the riddle because he's like, wait. He said a premise backwards.
Yeah, it works. Blaine opens his doors and they board. And Blaine thankfully had just enough time to make an ice sculpture of Roland.
That's so creepy.
I want
It's so cool.
I want an ice sculpture of me.
But do you want it from someone like Blaine or like your friends?
I'm so impressed by how little time he had to do it is all.
Yeah, it's such a like weird flex
Yes.
for Blaine to be like, yeah, I am so, your presence here means nothing to me. I can make this big, elaborate, perfect ice sculpture while I'm like killing dudes and blowing up a city. It means nothing. I am taunting you by making this big you that is going to melt and cease to exist.
You guys, okay, I'm sorry. You lick that ice sculpture, right?
Well, yeah.
What?
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
If
Don't
it was,
act like
no. If it was me,
a
yeah.
Roland.
Oh,
You found it. Yeah.
Of course.
I would be the weird member of the quartet that everybody was like, I guess she's part of this. She always makes it awkward. Like I am for the podcast.
Yeah. I send that out in our press packet, actually. The coolest feature, I believe, is Blaine being able to make everything transparent. That fucking rules.
It would be cool if he didn't use it in the way that he does.
Well, it starts off fun because it's really cool to see, but then they see the purple clouds and the people running like rats in the street.
Fucking Joker gas.
Yeah.
My favorite part throughout like this and just the rest of the time we're in this book on the train is that the whole time, no matter what Blaine does, everyone else has reactions to it. And Roland is just so chill. He's just
Really?
like,
Roland's just annoyed by him.
Yeah.
He's like, this fucking douche.
Pretentious asshole.
I hate this guy. He's a train.
He's a train.
Yeah, it's a neat way to introduce Blaine as like
Yeah.
a character, because he at first he's just showing off. He's doing it as a friendly, like, welcome to me. Look at this. And they feel like they're on a magic carpet, and he offers to turn on simulated wind so they could feel the wind flowing through their hair. And then as they turn a corner, they see the death and destruction. They're like, you can turn this off now. And he just does not respond.
Okay, they order him around and speak demands instead of making requests more often than I personally would feel comfortable doing with Blaine.
You know what? Fair.
I'm like trapped
point.
inside of you. I'm not going to give you shit.
I love that once they break the threshold of the city and they see the wastelands for the first time, and they are all taken aback with how devastated the land is, and they all know Jake was right. There's no way they could have made it through.
It looks like an alien landscape.
Yeah.
And Blaine turns on like this magnification feature. And so it zooms way, way, way in because they're just so far above the surface at this point. And they see like these impossible bug-like creatures and reptiles. It gave me very strong revival Null vibes. And also this, like, of all the parts of the whole Dark Tower series, the wastelands is what showed up in my dreams.
Yeah.
Not to, I swear to God, every time it happens, we go, why is this the one book that we are constantly comparing things to? It's the world on the other side of the Biwa Gate.
Yeah.
It is an alien landscape with creatures that make their heads hurt to look at them. It's either that or the wastelands in the Talisman.
Blasted lands.
Which, fun little idea is, so Lud, big city. I can't make this I can't actually talk about this without spoiling a thing that'll happen in the next book. Because if you have read Wizard and Glass, you know where they end up.
Topeka.
Where in relation, imagine Midworld as a corollary to the territories. And you know how distance is fucked up,
Yeah.
but the places correlate to. So if they're heading east,
I don't know. I don't know that we know.
okay, whatever direction they're heading, how far does Topeka correlate to where Las Vegas was? Some horrible cataclysmic nuclear fallout. Fucking Randall Flagg's here. I don't know. It's just like,
yeah. I did love that when Jake sees the map, it's like all these fantasy cities, and then Topeka is the end of the line. And Jake also reveals that he knows that Blaine plans to kill himself and them as well. It's like, it's all kind of settled in with Jake.
The reason they figured this out is they're like flying along. They know that they are going faster than the speed of sound, or are approaching it or whatever. As they're going, Blaine is talking about the tracks in front of them, and they're like, how do you know what happens if there's a break in the tracks? And he's like, do you have to ask? And they're like, how do you know that the bridge is intact? And he's like, oh, I fucking don't, because I've been asleep for a really long time, and when I woke up, I blew out the circuits that checked. And they're like, what? Why? And he's like,
oh, he also, we didn't talk about this. He also killed Patricia.
Well, Patricia killed
blue
herself,
train.
all right. Patricia was a suicide. The moment here, is that we find out how Blaine became a god. And it was essentially that he evolved from being a servant of the people. When the world moved on, the people started treating him like a deity, so that's what they needed to serve.
It's just a servant.
So he became their god because that's what they needed. And I just love how logical that
it's
progression.
such an artificial intelligence logic that I love.
It made me think Mr. Mitzelplick. I've mentioned this before. He's the Superman villain that in the old original comics, when he was first introduced, was like a mischievous trickster imp. And in Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, the quote unquote final Superman story of the original run of Superman. Superman's villains start getting murdered. And Superman's like, what the fuck? That doesn't happen in my stories. What's going on? And in the end, you find out, spoiler alert, that it was Mr. Mxyzptlk, who is immortal and interdimensional. And for the first billion infinities of his life, he was a benevolent deity. And then he got bored of that. So he became a trickster deity. And now he's bored of that. So he's just fucking gone off reservation. And he's an evil god now.
Huh. I hope he circles back.
Yeah.
Well, that continuity ended after that comic anyway.
Oh,
I don't even think that's canon.
There's also a moment where Blaine mentions the music of a wagog, which is an instrument that's played on a different level of the tower. A phrase that we throw around very casually, but I forgot here Roland says, "The fuck did you say?"
Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, you know about levels of the tower?
Roland's never heard about levels of the tower. This is the first time he's heard it.
This is our first time, technically. This made me think of the Star Trek TNG episode where Picard has like sort of an adopted son who's a human kid, but was raised by Klingons, and he's playing the Klingon music in their quarters super loud. So I imagined that music is
the Wagog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blaine reveals, yes, I'm going down and I'm taking you with me. Now give me riddles, daddy. And Roland says, fuck you.
And they all, I don't know if they actually do, but they all gasp.
Yeah.
Clutch their pearls.
Pretty much, yeah. Because like, will kill us right the fuck now.
Well,
like,
it's the difference between now and later.
Yeah, and Roland explains fair day.
Roland's fucking speech here is so good. He's like, how does it start? He's like, I am having a hard time being able to insult you in the right way.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a body, so I can't call you a cocksucker because you don't have a mouth or a cock. And I'm like, take that, train.
Yes. Yeah, he just really like dresses down this train.
There's a lot of theme in this book about having nothing to lose when faced with death.
And essentially, Roland boils it down to, you've given me no incentive. You've told me now I'm gonna die no matter what happens. So, back where I came from, we had a contest. What do you say we have one now? If we can ask you a riddle that you can't answer before we get to Topeka, you have to stop and let us off.
Safely, not in the fucking wastelands.
And Blaine agrees.
Well, and if he can't answer all their riddles, then they all get to die together.
Yeah. The point is they'll all be together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quartet.
And wildly, that is the end of this book.
It's so I forget every time
that it's a Cliffy.
Yeah, that it's a Cliffy.
It pissed me off so bad the first time. I believe I remember correctly. I finished this in my my teacher, Miss Griesenbeck. She was the one that introduced me to the Dark Tower series. She loaned me the Dark Tower books to read for the first time. And I finished it in her classroom, slammed it down, walked to the counter and picked up the fourth one and immediately started.
I did the same thing. I wasn't in that class, but I finished that night because my friend got me all 4 books for my 13th birthday.
Awesome.
And so I was just like, boom, boom. I couldn't wait. Could not stop. I think I stayed up till 5 a.m. reading.
Yeah. Which is why the next book we'll be covering is Wizard in Glass by the
No, I hate to break it to you. That's actually not. If you want to find out what we're covering next, stay tuned for the end of the episode after ratings, Eve.
Fair. I don't know. I don't pay attention to our group chats.
You find out at the end of the episode. Yeah, just like everybody else.
She likes being surprised.
Exactly.
And I respect that.
You like being teased. She likes being surprised.
It's true.
We know each other.
You like being the holder of all of the information.
That's true. I like authority.
That's why we're a good team.
Yep. Let's do ratings. CM, do you want to go first?
Yeah, because I don't have anything eloquent to say because I just love this book so much. I love all of the first 4 books so much. This one, we've said it a dozen times every episode, is so pivotal to the world building for us. There's really nothing I could complain about in it. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
I can find stuff to complain about because I'm very good at complaining. Um, like this book, it bothers me a tiny little bit that it is a series of vignettes. It is not so much like, it doesn't feel like one cohesive story, if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah. It has kind of a short story feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like there's the part about pulling Jake into the world. There's the part there's such clear distinct stories.
Yeah.
So I am going to not get a point for that. And then I'm going to add a point because it's so cool. 5 out of 5 blue chambray
Yes.
shirts.
Nice.
I was so invested in
Yeah.
your rating. I know we all get our own ratings, but
I was thinking, I'm like, I want to give it 4 out of 5 because I know how much I love Wizard in Glass, and I need there to be room to admit, but no,
Nah.
this is a great book. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
I wish I could remember how I felt the first time I read it, because the second time through has been such an amazing experience. This being the second time, I got something out of the first 2 books, but this one I got so much more
yeah.
out of having completed the journey before. The subtle references to what we'll read about in Wizard and Glass that I was able, oh, that's mentioned, and I remember that whole part of the story, and all that context slides into that moment. And so like this book is where the reread has really been amazing for me. 5 out of 5 blue chambray shirts.
And that is it for this episode of Derry Public Radio. As always, thank you for listening. Join us for our next episode, where we will be covering the story Riding the Bullet and the movie from the book Everything's Eventual. For Joshua Kahn and Eve Gatto, I'm CM Alexander reminding you, cast your nets, wanderers. Try me with your questions and let the contest begin. Hey everyone, CM Alexander here. Thank you for listening to The Wastelands Part 3. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, let us know your thoughts on our social media. You can follow us at Derry Public Radio on Facebook or Instagram, or Derry Public on X. You can also send us an email at derrypublicradio@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out our Etsy store, etsy.com/derrypublicradio, where you can find a lot of cool merchandise. Don't forget to chat with us and other Stephen King horror fans on our Discord. The link for that is in the show notes. And if you're looking for some extra content between episodes, check out our Patreon page. At the $5 and up tier, you get access to tons of bonus episodes, bonus shows, and we release a new episode at least once a month. That's patreon.com/derrypublicradio. That's all for now, listeners. Goodbye.